Hi, that's my first video in this year, and I want to tell you about how I spent my first 2 months of 2026. So, get a... Fuck! That's not what I want to tell you. That's actually not even my screenplay. I made it with ChatGPT. And actually, that's not who I wanted to become.
Lost your shoes in the snow, snow. Do you love me like your heart don't know? No. Blowing down in a big, big roll. Like my car. Do you love me like your heart don't know? 'Cause I'm your avalanche. Hey, I'm your avalanche. Hey, I'm your avalanche. I'm your avalanche. I'm your avalanche. Hey, I'm your avalanche. Hey, I'm your avalanche. I'm your avalanche. I will bury you alive and all your morals. I will bury you alive and all your morals.
I've always considered myself a punk. I know that sounds strange, especially if you don't know me at all. Okay, maybe not always, but I clearly remember the moment I made this decision. I was in my final year of middle school. My parents were at the very beginning of their divorce, and the world around me felt so complicated and unstable. I remember getting into the bathroom, running a bath, getting in, and just sitting there for a long time. I understood that everything that was happening in my life could break me if I kept taking everything through me and absorb it. I realized I had to change. It was a mental survival point. I decided I wouldn't leave that bathroom until I rebuilt myself from zero. It felt like I was growing some kind of shell around myself, sort of emotional armor, and the solution was already there. At that moment I knew a lot about punk ideology. All that was left was to perform an initiation ritual. So I grabbed a packet of henna from the shelf, mixed it thick in a plastic cup, and with my bare fingers started applying it to my hair. Soon the entire bathroom, the cup, my fingers, my scalp, my face, and most importantly, my hair was stained bright orange. It smelled like freshly cut grass, and maybe my memory is romanticizing it, but it looked so fucking incredible. I looked like a budget young version of John Lydon. I walked out of the bathroom and told my parents, I'm a punk now. I don't remember what they replied. They had their own problems. The next day, 8 AM, geography class, my teacher walks in, looks at me and asks, are you trying to find yourself? And for some reason, I answered something like, maybe, I'll check and call you back later. Super dumb and cringy answer. I know now it was childish. My hair color didn't change anything inside me. The way I dressed didn't magically transform my thinking. I was drowning in my teenage maximalism. The whole world seemed full of idiots. And I was already walking around with Green Mahawk and listening to pop-punk albums like they were sacred texts. Around the same time, I started playing in a rock band. We had absolutely no idea what we want to do musically. We didn't have a concept or a specific genre, we were just high that we can produce some noise together in sync. I was obsessed with putting the snare drum on the offbeat to get that classic punk gallop. It sounds like a rebellion, and the others like it too. As I grew older, I started realizing that you can't get very far on aesthetics and shallow rejection alone. Just saying no to everything isn't depth, and I wanted to become punk deeply inside. And there was one book that helped me to understand that. Hairstyles of the Damned by Joe Manno. It's actually a pretty ordinary teenage story with US suburban atmosphere, but the last chapter makes the whole book worth reading. In that chapter, we are at a Halloween party and we see everyone through the eyes of the main character. And it's a big metaphor for life. We are surrounded by kids pretending to be someone else. Kids wearing costumes and drinking beer to become adults faster for some reason. People dressed as witches, skeletons, werewolves, dumb shirts, mummies, slut cheerleaders, and God knows what else. But none of it matters. It doesn't matter what's on your head. A mohawk, a bowl cut, a mullet, slicked back Bryceland hair, red manic panic dye, shaved bald. And none of it matters if inside you're still basically a chav. Small-minded, aggressive, stupid chav, defined by your ego. I understood that at 18. The thought itself isn't revolutionary, but I drew two conclusions from it. First, most of the people around me are pretending. They're trying to fool me into thinking that they are unique and special. But we're all made from the same duff. We're not that different inside, at least by default. And second, the opposite is also true. Even if your hair isn't dyed, you're not having a mohawk, you're not wearing a leather jacket, or shouting "Oi" everywhere you go, that doesn't mean you're not a punk. The only thing that defines how punk you are is what's happening inside your head. Sounds logical, sounds cool, but there was just one problem. I grew up. And now, more than 10 years passed. I got into and finished university. I did student activism. I found an office job, and during COVID, I switched to remote work. I got married, I got divorced. I started renovating my house and never finished it. I did so many things that I was genuinely afraid of as a teenager. Each new version of me replacing the previous one, moving me further away from that kid who walked out of the bathroom and said, "I'm a punk now." I'm not an idiot. I understand that context matters. Social age matters. I know that holding on to the past is stupid. I understand the idea of suffering, and that's not what I'm arguing against. I'm asking something else. How did I completely forget who I was? How did I become this fucking boring adult? I literally feel like I'm standing in the middle of that Halloween party wearing the lamest costume in the room. And I don't even remember buying this shitty costume in Tesco. I haven't even said a word about punk ideology, because that's not the point. In some parallel universe, I dye my hair black and tell my parents I'm emo now. That wouldn't change the core. What really matters is that I grew up, and maybe not in a good way. Inside me, there's still a protest kid who hates the world and wants to make it better at the same time. I live in a country where it's not safe to criticize the government, but in any argument, I still say that capitalism is the main evil. And I remember that as a teenager, I was terrified of becoming a king of consumers, someone who builds his entire identity around consumption. And now, look at me. I pay $1,000 a year for iCloud and other dumb subscriptions. I buy myself fancy shoes and useless gadgets like Whoop. That's not rebellion. Maybe I'm late to realize it. Maybe it took a decade just to remember who I was. We have this tradition of 10-year school reunion. For 10 years, I kept thinking about what I would say to my classmates. I imagined some sort of flex, like, "Look at me, man. I got a stable job, a wife, a nice life, lots of money. I'm confident I'm super cool." That's bullshit. None of it matters. What I actually want to say is this. Yes, I was a little bastard, and I'm still a little bastard. No matter how hard the world tries, it always stays with me. So, if I met a former classmate on the street, and they ask me what I have achieved in life, I want to answer, I'm happy. And I will be always a little bastard. Don't grow up, it's a trap.